The classroom hummed with the quiet chatter of a dozen different species, each voice creating its own unique sound. Some students chirped, others hummed in low frequencies, and a few communicated through color shifts on their crystalline bodies. Professor Velthar stood at the front of the lecture hall, his 6 tentacles organizing holographic displays that floated in the air like captured stars. Jiwan sat in his usual seat near the middle of the room, his human frame looking small compared to many of his classmates. He had been at Galactic Academy for almost 6 months now, one of the first humans to study at the prestigious institution on Kepler 9 station. Most days he felt like he was still learning the basics of how to exist in a galaxy where his species was the newcomer. Next to him sat Hyunwoo, a Kethian whose forearms were currently taking notes on 2 different datapads simultaneously. His species had a reputation for being excellent students, and Hyunwoo lived up to that standard. On Jiwon's other side was Nari, whose crystalline body refracted the classroom lights into tiny rainbows across her desk. She was one of the few students who had made an effort to speak with Jiwon regularly, though their conversations were usually brief and focused on class material. Professor Velthar's voice cut through the ambient noise, automatically translated into each student's native language through their implants. Today we begin our unit on apex predators from classified death worlds. As you know, the galaxy contains many dangerous planets, and understanding the dominant predators from these worlds is essential for any xenobiologist. The holographic display shifted, showing a rotating list of planets. Jiwon recognized a few names from his studies, worlds that were marked with red warnings in the galactic database. Planets where the gravity could crush most species, or where the atmosphere was toxic, or where the native life forms were so aggressive that landing parties required military escorts. We will start with a relatively new addition to our database. Professor Velthar continued. Earth, homeworld of humanity, was recently classified as a Class 7 death world. Today we will examine some of its apex predators. Jiwon felt several students turn to look at him. He had grown used to this over the past months. Whenever Earth came up in conversation, he became the center of attention whether he wanted to be or not. He kept his eyes on the holographic display and tried to appear attentive. The first image appeared and the classroom filled with sounds of distress. A massive creature with white skin and black eyes rose from dark water, its mouth open to display rows of serrated teeth. Each tooth was the size of Jiwon's hand. The great white shark, Professor Velthar said, one tentacle gesturing at the image. An ocean predator capable of detecting electrical impulses from the nervous systems of its prey. It can smell blood from kilometers away and generates bite forces exceeding 18,000 newtons. Hyunwoo's forearms had stopped taking notes. His primary eyes were wide, and his secondary eyes were tracking the movements of the shark in the footage that now played across the display. Humans swim in the same waters as these creatures? He asked, his voice slightly higher than usual. Jiwon nodded. Yes, though attacks are rare. They usually prefer seals. The classroom went quiet at that casual response. Professor Velthar continued the lesson, moving through more predators. A saltwater crocodile that could death-roll prey underwater, a polar bear that could smell seals through a meter of ice, a king cobra with enough venom to kill an elephant. Each creature was more terrifying than the last, and the alien students reacted with appropriate horror. Then the display changed to show a different kind of predator. It was smaller than the others, with sleek fur and pointed ears. It moved through tall grass with absolute silence, its body low to the ground. When it pounced, its movements were so fast that the high-speed camera had trouble tracking them. Sharp claws extended from its paws, and it held a small bird in its mouth. This, Professor Velthar said, is one of Earth's most successful predators. It has spread to every continent where humans live. Its hunting success rate exceeds 70%. Far higher than most apex predators. It has been directly responsible for the extinction of at least 33 species. Its reflexes are faster than most military combat drones, and it can see in near total darkness. The creature in the video rolled onto its back in a patch of sunlight and began grooming itself. Looking completely harmless, Nari's color shifted to a concerned yellow. What defensive adaptations do humans possess against such creatures? Jiwon looked at the screen more carefully. It took him a moment to process what he was seeing, because surely Professor Velthar was not showing footage of a regular house cat and describing it like it was some kind of monster. But yes, that was definitely just a cat. It looked almost exactly like his family's cat back home. That one used to sleep beneath my bed, Ji-won said, speaking before he really thought about it. Every student in the classroom turned to stare at him. The various sounds of alien communication stopped completely. Even Professor Velthar's tentacles froze mid-gesture. Hyunwoo spoke first, his voice very quiet. You allowed an apex predator to enter your sleeping quarters? Ji-won felt confused by the reaction. Well, yes. Her name was Bori. She was my pet. The word pet apparently did not translate well because several students' implants made error noises. Nari's entire crystalline structure shifted to a pale, shocked blue. You kept this predator as a captive specimen? Professor Velthar asked, his translator implant making his voice sound even more bewildered than usual. For research purposes? No, as a companion, Ji-won explained. He was starting to realize that something about this conversation was going very wrong, but he could not figure out exactly what. Lots of humans have cats. Some people have 3 or 4. They live in our houses with us. They sleep on our furniture, sometimes on our faces. A small Tellurian student in the front row made a sound like escaping steam and slid down in his seat. Another student, whose species Ji-won did not recognize, began displaying a pattern of flashing lights that his implant translated as profound distress. My family has had cats for generations, Ji-won continued, thinking that maybe more information would help. Bori used to bring me presents. Dead mice, mostly. Once she caught a bird and left it by the door. Hyunwoo's forearms began trembling slightly. The predator brought you the corpses of its kills. As gifts, yes. It is a sign of affection. Nari's color was now cycling rapidly between different shades of blue and purple, which Ji-won had learned meant she was processing something that contradicted her entire understanding of reality. You are saying that humans deliberately cohabitate with apex predators? You invite them into your homes? Near your offspring, yes, Ji-won said, though it came out more like a question because he was so confused by everyone's reactions. He pulled out his datapad and found some pictures from home. His family had sent them a few weeks ago. He held up the pad so his nearby classmates could see. Look, this is Bori. She is very sweet. The image showed a fluffy orange cat sleeping in a patch of sunlight, her paws tucked under her chest. She looked peaceful and utterly harmless. This did not have the calming effect Ji-won had hoped for. If anything, the students looked more disturbed than before. It sleeps in solar radiation, someone whispered. To recharge its hunting capabilities, another student added. Professor Velthar's tentacles were moving in patterns that Ji-won had learned indicated deep thought. Perhaps we should continue this discussion, the professor said slowly. Ji-won, you said humans have other predators as companions. Ji-won nodded, not understanding why this was such a big deal. Sure, cats and dogs mostly. Dogs are bigger, usually. They are descended from wolves. The classroom erupted in chaos. Students were speaking over each other in a dozen different languages, their translator implants struggling to keep up. Several students had moved their seats further away from Ji-won without him noticing. Hyunwoo leaned slightly away from him, 3 of his 4 eyes very wide. You live with wolf descendants? They are very friendly, Ji-won said weakly. Professor Velthar held up a tentacle, calling for quiet. I think, he said carefully, that we need to have a much longer discussion about Earth and its inhabitants. The chaos in the classroom took several minutes to settle down. Professor Velthar had to use his authority voice, the one that made the translator implants vibrate in a way that demanded attention. Slowly, the students quieted, though Ji-won could see that many of them were still displaying signs of distress. Nari had moved her desk slightly further away from him, and her color was still an unstable purple. Ji-won felt bad about causing such a disruption. He had simply been trying to participate in class, and somehow he had managed to terrify everyone. He looked down at his datapad, at the picture of Bori sleeping peacefully, and tried to understand what had gone so wrong. Ji-won, Professor Velthar said, his voice calmer now. Perhaps you could explain to the class in detail the nature of your relationship with these predators. Start from the beginning. Ji-won nodded and stood up even though his legs felt a little unsteady. Public speaking was not his favorite thing, and doing it in front of aliens who apparently thought he was insane made it worse. Okay, so I grew up in a house with my parents and my younger brother. When I was 5 years old, we got Bori from an animal shelter. She was a kitten then, very small. An animal shelter? One student asked. It is a place where homeless animals are kept until someone adopts them, Ji-won explained. We went there specifically to find a cat to bring home. Yunwoo's translator implant made several error noises before producing words. You went hunting for a predator to bring into your home? On purpose? Not hunting exactly. We just looked at the cats they had available and chose one we liked. Ji-won showed another picture on his datapad. This is Bori as a kitten. She was about 8 weeks old. The image showed a tiny orange ball of fluff being held in human hands. Its eyes were barely open and it looked about as threatening as a piece of fruit. Several students leaned forward to see their earlier fear mixing with confusion. That is the same creature? Nari asked, her color shifting to a questioning yellow. Yes, they start very small. Bori lived with us for 14 years before she died of old age. She slept in my room every night. Sometimes under the bed, sometimes on top of it. She liked to sleep on my chest and purr. Purr? Someone asked. It is a sound they make when they are happy. A kind of vibration. Ji-won tried to imitate the sound, but his human vocal cords could not quite manage it. She would purr when I pet her or gave her food. Professor Velthar's tentacles moved in a thoughtful pattern. So this predator displayed positive behavioral responses to your presence. Did you use some kind of mental control? Chemical conditioning? No, we just took care of her. Fed her, gave her water, took her to the veterinarian when she was sick. She was part of the family. The concept seemed to be difficult for the class to process. A silicate student in the back raised one crystalline appendage. But the footage showed these creatures hunting and killing. Did your specimen never attack you? She scratched me sometimes when we played too rough, Ji-won admitted. And once she bit my hand when I tried to give her medicine. But she never seriously hurt anyone. She was gentle with my little brother even when he was a baby. It was in proximity to your offspring? Hyunwoo's voice was getting higher again. Ji-won pulled up another picture. His younger brother, maybe 3 years old in the photo, was hugging Bori. The cat looked mildly annoyed but was allowing the hug to happen. Yes, cats are good with children mostly. You have to teach the children to be gentle, but cats are patient. The classroom was silent for a long moment. Ji-won could see the students looking at each other, trying to make sense of what they were hearing. To them, it probably sounded like he was describing living with a trained bomb that could explode at any moment. But to Ji-won, he was just talking about his childhood pet. A student Ji-won did not know well, a Tellurian named Soo-hyuk, spoke up. Are cats the only Earth predators that humans keep in their homes? No, Ji-won said, and immediately regretted it when he saw the renewed panic on everyone's faces. I mean, dogs are more popular, actually. My cousin has a dog named Mungshil. He is very large and very friendly. Larger than the feline predators? Professor Velthar asked. Usually, yes. Dogs can be small, but many breeds are big. Mungshil weighs about 30 kilograms. One of the Kethian students made a choking sound. 30 kilograms of predator. He is very gentle, Ji-won said quickly. He likes to play fetch and sleep on the couch. My cousin's children ride on his back sometimes. At this point, another human voice spoke up from the back of the classroom. Ji-won had forgotten that Minho was also taking this class. My sister has a pet tarantula, Minho said helpfully. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. 3 students actually left their seats and moved toward the door. Nari's color went from purple to a pale, shocked white. Hyunwoo made a sound that the translator implant could not process. A what? Professor Velthar asked. Minho pulled up an image on his datapad and held it up. A tarantula. It is a kind of spider. Her name is Dubu and she lives in a glass tank in my sister's bedroom. The image showed a large, hairy spider sitting on someone's hand. The spider was easily the size of the hand it was resting on. Its 8 legs spread wide, its multiple eyes clearly visible. Your sibling keeps a venomous arachnid in her sleeping quarters? Soo-hyuk asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dubu is not that venomous, Minho said. Her bite is like a bee sting for humans, and she is very calm. My sister handles her all the time. Handles it? Hyunwoo repeated. With her appendages? Voluntarily? Yes, tarantulas are popular pets. Some people have collections of them. Professor Velthar seemed to be having trouble processing this information. His tentacles were moving in patterns that looked almost random, a sign of deep confusion. Collections. Multiple specimens of venomous arachnids in residential areas. I had a snake when I was younger, Ji-won added, thinking that maybe sharing his own experiences would help. It did not help. Just a small one, a corn snake. They are not venomous. He lived in a tank in my room and ate frozen mice once a week. You kept a constrictor serpent? Nari asked, her color now cycling through shades that Jiwon was pretty sure meant she was considering whether humans were actually insane. Corn snakes are not constrictors really, they are too small. He was maybe a meter long. The silicate student in the back spoke up again. What other earth creatures do humans keep as companions? Jiwon thought about it. Lots of things. Birds, fish, rabbits, hamsters, rats, ferrets, lizards, frogs. Some people keep insects like mantises or beetles. In rural areas, people keep chickens, horses, cows, pigs, goats. Those are farm animals, though, not really pets. Farm animals? Professor Velthar asked weakly. Animals raised for food or work, Jiwon explained. Chickens give eggs, cows give milk, horses help with transportation. Though most people keep horses for recreation now. Minho nodded. My grandfather has chickens. They are mean, though. They will chase you if you try to collect eggs without bringing them treats. The food animals attack their keepers? Hyunwoo asked. Chickens do sometimes. They have sharp beaks and claws. And geese are worse. We call them cobra chickens as a joke because they are so aggressive. Professor Velthar pulled up a new holographic display and did a quick search. Footage appeared of a goose chasing a human adult across a park, its wings spread wide, making aggressive honking sounds. The human was running away at full speed. The food animal is pursuing the human, Nari asked. Geese are territorial, Jiwon said. You have to be careful around them during nesting season. The classroom had gone from panic to simply stunned. Students were staring at Jiwon and Minho like they were aliens themselves, which was ironic considering the situation. Suyuk, who seemed braver than most, asked the question that was probably on everyone's mind. How do humans survive to adulthood if they live surrounded by all these predators and aggressive animals? Jiwon thought about it. I guess we just learn to coexist with them. You learn which animals are dangerous and how to behave around them. Most animals do not want to hurt humans unless they feel threatened. If you respect them and understand their behavior, it is usually fine. Usually fine, Hyunwoo repeated, his voice flat. Well, accidents happen sometimes, Jiwon admitted. People get bitten or scratched. But serious injuries are rare. We have good medical care. Professor Velthar's tentacles had stopped moving entirely. I think, he said slowly, that we need to expand this lesson considerably. Tomorrow we will discuss Earth's environment in detail. Class dismissed. As students filed out of the classroom, Jiwon noticed that they were giving him and Minho a much wider berth than usual. Nari paused near the door, her color a thoughtful orange. Jiwon, she said, are humans aware that other species find this behavior unusual? Jiwon shook his head. I did not know it was strange until today. On Earth, having pets is completely normal. I thought other species would do the same. Nari's color shifted to something Jiwon could not interpret. We are learning that humans have a very different definition of normal, she said, and then left the classroom. The next day, Jiwon arrived at class early, hoping to avoid the stares and whispers that had followed him through the station corridors all morning. News of the previous day's revelations had spread quickly through Galactic Academy. Apparently, the story of humans casually living with apex predators had become the main topic of conversation in every dining hall and common area. Hyunwoo was already in his seat, and he gave Jiwon a cautious nod when he sat down. The Keithian had spent most of the previous evening sending Jiwon questions through their communication devices, asking for clarification on various aspects of human-animal relationships. Jiwon had done his best to answer, but he was starting to realize that the gap between human and alien understanding was much larger than he had thought. Nari arrived a few minutes later, her crystalline body a neutral green color. She had also been asking questions, though hers were more analytical. She wanted to know about the evolutionary history of human domestication practices, the psychological benefits of animal companionship, and the statistical likelihood of injury from pet-related incidents. Jiwon had answered what he could and directed her to Earth's databases for the rest. Professor Velthar entered the classroom with what looked like determination. All 6 of his tentacles were carrying data pads, and he had the air of someone who had spent all night preparing for something difficult. The classroom filled up quickly, and Jiwon noticed that there were more students than usual. Word had apparently spread that today's lesson would be interesting. Yesterday we learned something unexpected, Professor Velthar began. We discovered that humans have developed a unique relationship with the predators on their homeworld. Today we are going to discuss why this might be the case by examining Earth itself. The holographic display activated, showing an image of Earth from space. It was a beautiful planet, blue and green and white, hanging in the darkness of space like a jewel. Jiwan felt a small pang of homesickness looking at it. Earth, Professor Velthar continued, was recently classified as a Class 7 death world. For those unfamiliar with the classification system, this means it is a planet where the environment is actively hostile to most forms of life. Only Class 8 and 9 worlds are considered more dangerous. Several students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Jiwan had known Earth was classified as a death world, but he had not realized it was rated so highly. On Earth, the environment just seemed normal. Let us start with the basics, the professor said. Earth's atmosphere contains 21% oxygen. There was a collective intake of breath from around the classroom. One student actually got up and moved to a seat further from Jiwon. Hyunwoo's forearms had frozen in place. 21%? He repeated. That is toxic, Jiwon looked at him in confusion. What do you mean toxic? Most species in the galaxy breathe atmospheres with 5 to 8% oxygen, Nari explained, her color shifting to an educational blue. Higher concentrations are corrosive to our biological systems. 21% would kill most of us in minutes. Oh, Jiwan said quietly. He had not known that. I guess that is why I have to wear this when I visit other parts of the station. He tapped the small breathing device attached to his belt, which adjusted the oxygen content of the air he breathed when he was in areas designed for other species. Professor Velthar continued. Earth's gravity is also significantly higher than standard. Most of you would find it difficult to move on the surface without mechanical assistance. The planet experiences regular seismic activity, including earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Its weather systems include hurricanes with wind speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour, tornadoes, tsunamis, and extreme temperature variations. The holographic display showed footage of each phenomenon as the professor described it. A hurricane from space, its spiral arms clearly visible, a tornado tearing through a landscape, a volcanic eruption sending ash kilometers into the sky. With each image, the classroom became quieter. But the most significant factor, Professor Velthar said, is the biodiversity. Earth has more apex predators per square kilometer than any other cataloged world in the database. A map of Earth appeared, covered in red dots. Each dot represented the territory of a major predator species. The continents were almost completely red, the oceans even more so. On land, humans share their environment with creatures like bears, large cats, wolves, venomous snakes, and poisonous insects. In the oceans, they coexist with sharks, crocodiles, venomous jellyfish, and predatory mammals like orcas. New footage played, showing each creature in action. A grizzly bear catching salmon from a river, a lion taking down prey on a savanna, an orca hunting seals near an ice shelf. The alien students watched in horrified fascination. A silicate student raised an appendage. How do humans defend themselves against these threats? Jiwan thought about it. Most of the time we just avoid them. We build our cities and towns in safe areas. We have warning systems for dangerous animals. If a bear or mountain lion comes into a populated area, we have professionals who can relocate it safely. You relocate them? Hyunwoo asked. You do not eliminate the threat? Not usually, no. Most predators are protected by law. We try to preserve them. The classroom was silent for a moment as everyone processed this. Suyuk, the brave Tellurian student, spoke up. So humans deliberately maintain populations of dangerous predators near their living spaces? Well, yes, Jiwan said. They are part of the ecosystem. Without predators, the prey animals would overpopulate and damage the environment. Everything is connected. Professor Velthar's tentacles moved in a pattern that Jiwan was learning to recognize as approval. An excellent point. Humans understand their planet's ecology in a way that suggests long-term adaptation. This brings us to another aspect of Earth that I believe is relevant. The display changed to show various plants. They looked harmless enough at first, but then the professor began explaining. Earth's plant life is also unusually hostile. There are plants that consume insects. Plants with thorns sharp enough to puncture most standard protective gear. Plants that produce toxins capable of causing severe injury or death. Even casual contact with some species can result in painful reactions. Footage showed a Venus flytrap closing around an insect, a rosebush with thorns, a person's skin covered in a rash from poison ivy, an unfortunate animal that had eaten from a toxic plant. Jiwon remembered going on a camping trip as a child, and his mother warning him extensively about which plants to avoid. He had thought every species had to deal with similar issues, but apparently not. Minho raised his hand. I grew up near the mountains. We had to keep special trash cans that bears could not open. Every few weeks someone would report a bear sighting and we would all have to be careful about going outside at night. The alien students stared at him. This was normal? Nari asked, her color shifting to a disbelieving purple. Yes, everyone in mountain towns knows how to deal with bears. You make noise when you hike so you do not surprise them. You keep your food sealed. You do not run if you see one. It is just part of living there. Another human student, Yuna, spoke up from the back. I lived near the coast. We had to watch for riptides and jellyfish when swimming, and sharks, but they usually stayed in deeper water. You voluntarily entered water that contained predatory creatures? Someone asked. The ocean is fun, Yuna said with a shrug. You just have to be smart about it. Professor Velthar pulled up more data. Humans have inhabited every continent on Earth except Antarctica, and even there they maintain research stations. They live in deserts where daytime temperatures can kill through heat exposure. They live in Arctic regions where nighttime temperatures can kill through cold. They live in jungles filled with venomous creatures and tropical diseases. They live on islands threatened by tsunamis and volcanoes. The map showed human settlements scattered across every environment type, from frozen tundra to burning deserts to dense rainforests. The question we must ask, the professor continued, is how did humans not only survive but thrive in such an environment? And the answer, I believe, is related to what we discussed yesterday. The display changed to show an image of a human and a dog walking together through a forest. Humans survived through cooperation, not just with each other but with the other species on their planet. They domesticated wolves to help them hunt and provide protection. They domesticated cats to control pest populations. They domesticated horses for transportation. They formed partnerships with the other life forms on their world. Hyunwoo's primary eyes were wide. They made allies of the predators? In a way, yes, Jiwon said. Dogs descended from wolves, but they evolved alongside humans for thousands of years. They became partners. Same with horses and cats and other domestic animals. We did not conquer them. We worked together. Nari's color had shifted to a thoughtful orange. So the human approach to a hostile environment was not to dominate it, but to integrate with it. I guess so, Jiwon said. We are part of Earth's ecosystem, not separate from it. We had to learn to coexist. Professor Velthar's tentacles moved in agreement. This is a fundamentally different approach than most species took. The Keithians terraformed their homeworld to be more manageable. The Silicates eliminated most competing life forms early in their development. The Tellurians built sealed cities to protect themselves from their planet's weather. But humans adapted to their world rather than changing it. We do change it sometimes, Jiwon admitted. Not always in good ways. We have environmental problems. But we are trying to do better. The classroom was quiet as everyone absorbed this information. Jiwon could see that the other students were looking at him differently now. Not with fear exactly, but with a kind of cautious respect. I think I am beginning to understand, Soo-hyuk said slowly. Humans are not insane for living with predators. They are simply accustomed to a level of environmental danger that would be unthinkable to most of us. And they developed psychological and cultural adaptations to cope with that danger, Nari added, including forming emotional bonds with the same types of creatures that posed threats. Professor Velthar's tentacles moved in what looked like satisfaction. Exactly. Tomorrow we will discuss the implications of this for human integration into galactic society. But for now, I think we have all learned something important. Humans are not reckless. They are simply the product of a world that demanded unusual survival strategies. The days following the Earth environment lesson were strange for Jiwon. Word had spread throughout the entire station about the human students and their Death World origins. Everywhere he went, conversations would stop when he approached. Students would watch him with wide eyes or multiple eyes or sensing organs depending on their species. Some moved away when he came near. Others stared with what seemed like morbid curiosity. In the dining hall, Jiwon sat with his tray of food while students at nearby tables whispered and pointed. The food was specially prepared for human consumption, with the correct oxygen ratios and nutritional content. Most species could not eat what humans ate. The protein content alone would be toxic to many of them. This was another fact that Jiwon had learned recently, and it made him feel even more alien than before. Hyunwoo approached carefully, his forearms holding his own meal tray. "May I sit with you?" he asked, his voice polite but cautious. "Of course," Jiwon said, grateful for the company. "You do not have to ask." Hyunwoo sat down, but Jiwon noticed he chose a seat that left more space between them than usual. "I have been thinking about what we learned in class," the Keithian said. "About Earth and its environment. I have been trying to understand how humans can seem so normal when they come from such a dangerous world." "We are normal," Jiwon said quietly. "At least we are normal to ourselves. I did not know we were different until I came here." Nari appeared at their table, her crystalline body shifting through colors before settling on a neutral green. "May I join you?" she asked. "Yes, please," Jiwon said, gesturing to the empty seats. Nari sat down, though she also maintained more distance than she used to. "I have been researching human history," she said. "I accessed the Earth databases that were uploaded to the Galactic Network. The information is disturbing." Jiwon felt his stomach tighten. "Disturbing how?" "Your species has survived multiple mass extinction events. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun. Floods and droughts and plagues. And through all of it, humans persisted. I suppose we are stubborn," Jiwon said, attempting a smile. Nari's color shifted to a serious blue. "It is more than stubbornness. Humans have a biological adaptation for persistence that most species lack. Your bodies can survive injuries that would kill others. Your minds can adapt to extreme stress. You can go without food for weeks and without water for days. You can function in temperature extremes that would incapacitate most galactic species." Hyunwoo nodded, his forehands carefully manipulating his eating utensils. "I read that human bones are denser than standard. Your muscles can produce anaerobic energy in emergency situations. Your immune systems can adapt to new diseases in real time." Jiwon had never thought about these things as special. They were just normal human traits. "I guess we had to develop those abilities to survive on Earth." "That is what concerns me," Nari said softly. "Not that you have these abilities, but that you needed them. What kind of world requires its inhabitants to be that resilient just to reach adulthood?" The question hung in the air. Jiwon looked down at his food, suddenly not very hungry. Soo-hyuk appeared at their table carrying his meal. The Tellurian looked nervous but determined. "May I sit with you?" he asked. "Yes," Jiwon said, surprised. Soo-hyuk had seemed more afraid than most students after the revelations about Earth. Soo-hyuk sat down and looked directly at Jiwon. "I want to understand," he said. "I want to understand humans. Everyone is afraid, but fear comes from ignorance. I would rather learn than be afraid." Jiwon felt something warm in his chest. "Thank you. What do you want to know?" "Everything," Soo-hyuk said. "But maybe start with this. You said your cat used to bring you dead animals as gifts. Why would a predator give away its food?" Jiwon thought about how to explain it. "Cats do not see humans as threats or as prey. They see us as part of their family group. When a cat brings you something it has killed, it is trying to provide for you. Mother cats do this for their kittens, teaching them to hunt. Bori was treating me like family. So the predator was attempting to nurture you," Nari said, her color shifting to a thoughtful orange. "It had bonded with you socially. Yes, cats are independent, but they are also social creatures. They choose to be with humans because we provide safety and companionship. It is a mutual relationship." Hyunwoo's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "But dogs are different, correct? You mentioned that dogs descended from wolves. Yes, wolves are pack animals. They have strong social hierarchies and family bonds. Dogs inherited those traits. When humans domesticated wolves, we became part of their pack structure. Dogs see their human families as their pack. So they have loyalty programming," Soo-hyuk said. "Not exactly programming," Jiwon said. "It is genuine emotion. Dogs love their humans. They feel joy when we are happy and distress when we are sad. They will protect us even at risk to themselves. There are thousands of stories of dogs saving humans from danger." Nari's color flickered. "A predator species will risk itself to protect humans?" "Yes. There was a story from last year, a dog named Buddy who woke his family when their house caught fire. He barked until everyone evacuated, then went back inside to make sure no one was left behind. He died from smoke inhalation, but everyone else survived. The table was quiet for a long moment. That is not predator behavior, Hyunwoo said softly. That is heroism. Dogs can be heroes, Jiwon agreed. So can humans. So can anyone, I think. More students began to approach their table. First one, then another, until there was a small crowd standing nearby. They all looked curious and nervous and uncertain. A silicate student spoke up. Is it true that humans have animals living in their homes that could kill them? Jiwon nodded. Yes, technically. But they do not want to kill us. They are domesticated. That means they have evolved alongside humans for thousands of years. They are adapted to live with us peacefully. But accidents must happen, someone said. Sometimes, Jiwon admitted. Dogs bite about 5 million people per year on Earth. It sounds like a lot, but there are billions of humans and hundreds of millions of dogs. The actual percentage is very small. And most bites happen because humans do not understand dog behavior or ignore warning signs. So humans take responsibility for understanding the animals they live with, Nari observed. Yes, we learn their body language, their needs, their boundaries. It is like any relationship. You have to communicate and respect each other. Yuna, the other human student, had approached the table. Can I add something? She asked. Please, Jiwon said. Yuna addressed the crowd of alien students. I think what you need to understand is that humans do not see animals as threats by default. We see them as other beings sharing our world. Yes, some animals are dangerous, but most just want to live their lives. We learn to coexist because we have to, and over time that coexistence became something more. It became companionship. But you are predators too, someone said. Humans are apex predators. Yes, Yuna agreed. But we are also social creatures. We form bonds easily even with other species, maybe especially with other species. On Earth, humans have been known to befriend bears, lions, even crocodiles in rare cases. It is not always safe or smart, but it shows that humans have a capacity for connection that crosses species boundaries. Minho joined the conversation. My grandmother had a farm. She talked to her chickens like they were people. She knew each one by name and personality. They were food animals, yes, but she still cared about them. She made sure they had good lives. The alien students looked baffled by this concept. You care for animals even when you are going to consume them? Hyunwoo asked. Good farmers do, Minho said. It is about respect. The animals provide for us, so we provide for them while they live. It is complicated, but most humans understand that we have a responsibility to the animals we keep. Professor Velthar had been standing at the edge of the crowd, listening. Now he stepped forward. What I am hearing, he said, is that humans have developed a complex ethical framework around their relationships with other species. Is that correct? Jiwon nodded. I think so. We have laws protecting animals from cruelty. We have organizations dedicated to animal welfare. We debate about what rights animals should have. Not everyone agrees, and we do not always do things correctly. But most humans believe that animals deserve to be treated well. Even the predators? Someone asked. Especially the predators, Jiwon said, because they are vulnerable too. Many Earth predators are endangered because of human activity. We have programs to protect them and help their populations recover. We have learned that we need them. A world without predators is a world out of balance. Nari's color had shifted to a warm, understanding yellow. I think I am beginning to see. Humans do not view danger as something to be eliminated. They view it as something to be understood and respected. Yes, Jiwon said, feeling relieved that someone was starting to understand. Earth taught us that everything is connected. You cannot remove one piece without affecting the whole system. So instead of trying to control everything, we learned to be part of it. Soo-hyuk looked at Jiwon with what seemed like newfound respect. Your species learned wisdom from living in danger. Maybe, Jiwon said. Or maybe we just learned how to survive. But I think survival taught us empathy. When you understand that all living things are fighting to survive, it is easier to have compassion for them. The crowd of students had grown larger, and many were now sitting down at nearby tables listening to the conversation. The fear that had dominated their expressions was slowly being replaced by curiosity and understanding. 2 weeks had passed since the revelations in Professor Velthar's class, and Jiwon was starting to feel like life at Galactic Academy was returning to something resembling normal. The stares had not stopped completely, but they were less frequent now. More importantly, they were accompanied by curiosity rather than fear. Students had begun approaching G1 and the other human students with questions. Real questions, not accusations or expressions of disbelief. They wanted to know about Earth's animals, about human culture, about what it was like growing up on a death world. G1 found himself becoming an unofficial ambassador for humanity, a role he had never expected or prepared for. Hyunwoo had become something close to a friend. The Cathian spent most of his free time with G1 now, asking endless questions about Earth. He was particularly fascinated by dogs and had spent hours watching videos from Earth's databases showing different breeds and their behaviors. "Think I understand the appeal," Hyunwoo said one afternoon as they studied together in the common area. His 4 hands were sorting through data pads while simultaneously taking notes. Dogs offer unconditional positive regard. They provide emotional support without judgment. It is logical that humans would value that relationship. "It is not just logic," Ji-won said with a smile. "It is love. Dogs love their humans and humans love their dogs. It is emotional, not just practical." Hyunwoo's primary eyes blinked thoughtfully. "My species does not form emotional bonds easily. We value efficiency and productivity. But watching the videos of humans with their dogs, I can see that there is something valuable in that bond that cannot be measured in practical terms." Nari joined them, her crystalline body a warm golden color. She had been spending time with Yuna, learning about Earth's ocean ecosystems. "I have been thinking about what you said," she told Ji-won, "about empathy coming from understanding that all living things are fighting to survive. I believe that perspective could benefit the entire galaxy." "What do you mean?" Ji-won asked. "Most species in the galactic community see other life forms as either useful or threatening. Resources are obstacles, but humans see them as fellow survivors. That is a fundamentally different worldview." Suyuk approached their study group carrying his datapad. The Tellurian had become one of the most enthusiastic students of human culture. "Ji-won, I have a question. I have been reading about service animals on Earth. Dogs that help humans with disabilities. How did humans develop such specialized partnerships?" Ji-won explained about guide dogs for the blind, hearing dogs for the deaf, and therapy dogs that helped people with various conditions. He told Suyuk about how dogs could be trained to detect medical emergencies like seizures or low blood sugar, sometimes before the human even realized something was wrong. "So humans have selectively bred dogs to perform specific tasks," Suyuk said. "But the dogs do this willingly?" "Yes, dogs want to work with humans. They find purpose in having jobs. A working dog is usually a happy dog because they feel useful and connected to their person." "Remarkable," Suyuk said. "A predator species that finds fulfillment in serving another species. It challenges everything I thought I knew about predator psychology." Professor Velthar had continued the xenobiology curriculum, but now he regularly invited the human students to contribute to discussions. Today's class was about interspecies communication, and Ji-won had been asked to present a section about how humans communicate with animals. Standing at the front of the classroom, Ji-won felt nervous but also excited. The other students were watching him with interest rather than fear, which was a significant improvement. "Humans communicate with animals in many ways," he began. "We use verbal commands, obviously, but also body language, tone of voice, and learned behavioral cues. Dogs, for example, can understand hundreds of words and can read human facial expressions and emotional states." He pulled up a video on the holographic display. It showed a woman sitting on a couch crying. A large dog approached her, gently rested his head on her lap, and stayed there until she calmed down. "This is emotional support," Ji-won explained. The dog sensed that the human was distressed and responded with comfort. Nobody trained him to do this specific action. He did it because he understood her emotional state and wanted to help. The classroom was silent, watching the video with what seemed like amazement. "But communication goes both ways," Ji-won continued. "Humans also learn to read animal body language. We can tell when a dog is happy, scared, aggressive, or playful. We can tell when a cat wants attention or wants to be left alone. This mutual understanding is what makes the relationship work." Nari raised a crystalline appendage. "So humans develop what could be called a shared language with their animal companions?" "Yes, exactly. Every human-animal relationship is unique because they develop their own communication patterns. My cat Bori had specific sounds she would make when she wanted different things. I learned to recognize them." She learned that certain actions from me meant certain things. We understood each other. Minho added his perspective. My sister's tarantula Dubu cannot vocalize or show facial expressions, but my sister can still read her body language. The position of her legs, the way she moves, whether she comes to the front of the tank or hides in the back. These all communicate information. It is subtle, but it is real communication. Professor Velthar's tentacles moved in an approving pattern. What you are describing is empathy-based communication. The ability to understand another being's state without relying solely on verbal language. This is a skill that could be valuable in galactic relations. I never thought about it that way, Jiwan admitted. For humans, it is just normal to try to understand the creatures we live with. After class, a group of students gathered around Jiwan. One of them, a silicate named Daehyun, who had been particularly frightened during the early discussions, spoke up. I want to apologize, he said, his crystalline structure showing colors of regret. When I first learned about humans living with predators, I thought your species was reckless and dangerous. I was wrong. I understand now that you are simply adapted to a world that required different survival strategies. You do not need to apologize, Jiwan said. I understand why it seemed strange to you. I am still learning how different Earth is from other worlds. I have a request, Daehyun continued. Several of us have been talking. We would like to visit Earth, to see your homeworld and understand your species better. Would that be possible? Jiwan felt surprised and touched. I think so. Earth welcomes visitors, though you would need environmental suits to handle the oxygen levels and gravity, and there are safety protocols for Death World tourism. We understand the risks, Daehyun said, but we believe it is worth it. How can we truly understand humanity without seeing where you come from? Over the next few weeks, plans were made for a field trip to Earth. Professor Velthar approved the expedition as an educational experience. A group of 15 students, including Hyunwoo, Nari, Suhyuk, and Daehyun, signed up to go. The day of the trip arrived, and the group boarded a transport ship equipped with environmental controls for multiple species. The journey to Earth took several days, during which Jiwan and the other human students prepared their alien classmates for what they would experience. Remember, Jiwan told them, Earth is going to seem very intense to you. The colors are brighter because of the oxygen-rich atmosphere. The sounds are louder. Everything moves faster, but you will be safe in your environmental suits. When they arrived, the transport entered Earth's atmosphere over the Korean peninsula. Jiwan had arranged for them to visit his hometown, a small city surrounded by mountains and forests. The alien students emerged from the transport in their protective suits, which regulated their oxygen intake, supported them against the higher gravity, and protected them from any biological hazards. They looked around with wide eyes and sensing organs. The sky is so blue, Nari said, her voice coming through the communication system. The images did not capture how blue it is. That is the oxygen interacting with the sunlight, Jiwan explained. On planets with less oxygen, the sky is usually a different color. They walked through a park, and the alien students marveled at Earth's plant life. Trees that grew tall and strong, flowers in colors that seemed impossibly vibrant, grass that covered the ground in a soft carpet. Birds flew overhead and squirrels ran up tree trunks. Everything is so alive, Hyunwoo said, his forearms gesturing at the environment. I have never seen an ecosystem this active. This is a park in a city, Jiwan said. The wilderness areas are even more intense. They visited Jiwan's family home, where his parents had prepared to meet the alien visitors. And waiting at the door, curious about the strange beings approaching, was a new orange cat. Everyone, this is Dubu, Jiwan said. We got her after Bori passed away. Dubu meowed and walked toward the group, her tail up in a friendly greeting. The alien students tensed even though they were in protective suits and the cat weighed maybe 4 kilograms. She wants to say hello, Jiwan explained. She is curious about you. Suyuk, the bravest of the group, slowly extended one appendage toward the cat. Dubu sniffed it carefully, then rubbed her head against it. She likes you, Jiwan said with a smile. That is how cats show affection. It is so small, Suyuk said, his voice filled with wonder. In the videos, these creatures seemed so much more threatening. But standing here, I can see it is just a small animal that chose to show me affection. Other students approached carefully, taking turns interacting with Dubu. The cat seemed to enjoy the attention, purring loudly and weaving between their legs. Later, they visited a local farm where Minho's family kept various animals. The alien students met chickens, which Daehyun found both ridiculous and terrifying. They saw horses, which Hyunwoo described as beautiful engines of destruction. They even observed cows grazing peacefully in a field. These animals coexist with humans, Nari said, her color a thoughtful orange. They do not attack or flee. They simply live their lives while humans live theirs. That is what coexistence means, Yuna said. Not control, not domination. Just sharing the space and respecting each other's needs. On their last day on Earth, the group visited a wildlife preserve where they could observe Earth's predators from a safe distance. They saw bears fishing in a stream, wolves traveling in a pack, and eagles soaring overhead. These are the apex predators, Professor Velthar said, having joined the expedition. The most dangerous creatures on Earth. And yet humans have found ways to live alongside them to protect them, even to form bonds with their domesticated descendants. Ji-won looked at his classmates and saw that they were no longer looking at Earth's creatures with fear. They were looking with respect and understanding. I think I finally understand what makes humans unique, Hyunwoo said. You are not fearless. You are not reckless. You simply learned that the world is full of danger and beauty, and you chose to embrace both. You learned that strength does not mean eliminating threats, but understanding them. As they boarded the transport to return to the academy, Soo-hyuk approached Ji-won one last time. Thank you for teaching us about your world. I came here afraid of humans and your planet. I leave with profound respect for both. Thank you for being willing to learn, Ji-won replied. Back at Galactic Academy, the story of the Earth expedition spread quickly. Students who had been wary of humans began to approach them differently. They asked questions, shared their own stories, and expressed interest in their homeworlds being visited by humans in return. Professor Velthar incorporated the lessons from Earth into his curriculum, using humanity as an example of alternative evolutionary strategies. The idea that coexistence could be more valuable than domination began to influence discussions in other classes as well. One evening, Ji-won found himself back in the common area where this had all started, studying with Hyunwoo, Nari, and Soo-hyuk. They were no longer just classmates. They were friends who had learned to understand each other despite coming from completely different worlds. I have been thinking, Nari said, her color a warm golden hue. Humans have something to teach the galaxy, not just about surviving death worlds, but about building relationships across differences, about finding common ground with beings completely unlike yourselves. We are still learning that ourselves, Ji-won said honestly. Humans do not always get it right. We have conflicts and misunderstandings just like anyone else. But you try, Hyunwoo said. That is what matters. You see other beings, even predators, as potential friends rather than inevitable enemies. The galaxy could benefit from that perspective. Ji-won smiled, thinking about Dubu back home, probably sleeping in a patch of sunlight right now. He thought about all the humans throughout history who had looked at a wolf or a wild cat or a horse, and seen not just an animal, but a potential companion. That seemingly small choice had shaped his entire species. Maybe that is humanity's real gift to the galaxy, Ji-won said. Not our survival skills or our resilience, but our willingness to reach out to others, even when it seems impossible, to build bridges instead of walls. His friends made sounds and colors of agreement, each in their own species' way of expressing approval. And in that moment, in a space station far from Earth, a small group of beings from different worlds sat together in friendship, proving that understanding could overcome fear, and connection could cross any divide.